Hi, boxing fans. How are you? My name is Rick, and now on the London Montreal boxing show. It's a unique show, in the world. We're going to talk boxing, and Michael Angelo Serra, a specialist in boxing, and myself, Rick Amel, in this show, okay, we tried, to have some fun, okay, first. And after talking boxing, okay, with my friend Michael Angelo Serra. So I hope you will enjoy, this podcast, okay, between Michael and me. So we're gonna talk first, about a very good fighter, Moises Itauma. Moises Itauma is a very good fighter. He won a fight against, Dillian White. And we're going to talk, also about Joe Calzaghe, Joe and Enzo Calzaghe, the father. We're going to talk about this, those two wonderful, personality, boxing personality. So that's it for that. So welcome to the London Montreal boxing show, boxing fans with Michael Angelo Serra and myself, Rick Amel, and for this podcast, I think it's a very good podcast, a simple one. And the second one we're gonna talk, the next week we're gonna talk about Canelo Alvarez and Mr. Terence Crawford, boxing fans, and we're gonna talk, a little bit about other boxers, okay? So maybe Carl Froch, by the way, okay? So that's it for that. So I hope you will enjoy this show. And Michael, okay, it's your turn, Michael. So we're gonna talk together about boxing, and as usual, it's very funny. Okay, so what do you think, about Itauma? Moises Itauma. So it's for you, Michael. So that's it.
Hey, Richard, Moses Itauma, how do you feel he's going to do? Do you believe that he's ready for music right now, or do you believe that he needs more time?
No, I think he's not ready for music, and his manager said, I'm going to make a fight with another fighter, and I think he stay near your in London or something like that. Pulev. Yes,
that's the Bulgarian guy.
Okay, yes.
Kudret Pulev. Yeah, he boxed Anthony Joshua for the world title in England.
I remember that. Yes.
He
lost.
He got outclassed, I felt, but he's always been around the scene. I believe he fought Vladimir Klitschko also some years back prior to.
Yes. Okay.
Challenge. And then he boxed Manuel Char for something called the WBA interim title, which or one of those WBA championships, which I'm not a fan of, and I don't believe many people are. Just touching on that, back in the day, like going back 10 years ago, maybe obviously longer, many boxing fans are always like, when they're assessing a fighter, whether he's going to go all the way to a world title, many of us would always say, is he genuine world class? But now, we beg the question, is he a genuine world champion? Because there's so many different types floating around.
It's a very good question, Everybody said he's ready for music, He's a champion because he won a fight against Dillian White, but I'm not very sure about this, Michael, honestly.
I don't feel that he's ready. I think there's many more boxes to tick. We don't know whether he can take a good punch. He looks good, but everybody looks good when they're knocking someone over. A guy who I'd like to draw a comparison with is a guy you're familiar with, Nigel Benn from this country. Now, he did a lot of things as an amateur. He was an ABA as a national champion in England, national British champion, and he turned pro with Frank Warren, and he was knocking out all of his opponents. But the thing is, when you go in there and you hit someone on the chin and they're falling over, you're not learning a lot. You're learning nothing. And he had one opponent called Reggie Miller, who boxed against another prospect called Bob Douglas, the only man to have beaten Nigel Benn in the amateurs. and though Ben avenged that loss. But and Miller extended Ben, and Miller was more of a journeyman type. You know, he wasn't a guy who was a contender or getting up there. You know, and Ben struggled. And again, then they put him in for a Commonwealth title fight against a guy called Abdul Umaru Sanda. He was from Ghana, a very tall guy, about 6'2", very tall for a middleweight, like like a beanpole he was. And the thing is, I like to draw that comparison because the same with Itauma. He's knocking over these guys, and Ben's first real test, I believe, was Sanda. Sanda had boxed over in England before against Tony Sibson, who boxed Marvin Hagler for the world title.
Yeah.
And he's best known for that. Great fighter in his own right, though, Sibson. And he took Sibson full 12 rounds in 1986, 2 years before Ben got to fight Sanda. So he was a proven fighter, you know, at championship level, as a Commonwealth, at Commonwealth level, Sanda was. So then, you know, and then I draw that comparison with Umaru Abdul Sanda and Dillian White, because here's two guys who have, you know, they've put on some really good performances, shown that they're sort of like, they're up there, so to speak. I mean, you know, Whit White was obviously, you know, well rated. He became a world champion, for example. But I'm just putting those two as they're comparisons, because they draw a lot of comparisons. So Ben knocks over Sanda in 2 rounds, becomes Commonwealth champion. And the same thing with Itauma, but he boxed an old guy in Dillian White. It proved nothing. The win for Ben against Sanda, I'm going back to 1988 here. Yes, it did prove a lot more than what Itauma proved against Dillian White. But Ben was still, he was far from the finished article. And they was all saying he's a real world champion. Like, he's just won the Commonwealth. He's going to be a world, you know, he'll go on, blah, blah, blah. Just like they're saying about Itauma. And the thing is, Ben, he made a few defences against fairly inept fighters from Africa. And then he came up against, in a Commonwealth title defence, against a guy called Michael Watson. And Watson, he burst Ben's bubble. He beat Ben, stopped Ben, and this is the same thing where he wasn't rushed. He wasn't learning his trade, Ben. He wasn't learning to pace himself. He was going in there crash bang wallop. And against Watson, Watson did what the guy behind you was doing, Foreman alley. Watson tucked up on the ropes, and he kept his hands and elbows in and let Ben punch himself out. And it's exactly what Ali did to Foreman. And it's this where Ben did not learn much from knocking over those, not so good guys, the journeyman types who were falling over in front of him. So, you know, it's okay knocking these guys over, but Itauma is not learning nothing. And the Dillian White fight proved, in my opinion, very little. It proved one thing, though, that he's a world-class puncher. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But, again, as I said before, there's many, many boxes to tick here. Can he take a punch at world level? What happens when he gets dragged into the trenches? What happens when the other guy, is a good boxer? Does Itauma, does he have a plan B? You know, what's his stamina like? Has he got late rounds power? You know, there's so many tangibles here.
But Michael, sorry, you know, he said he was a little bit scared about White, you know, and he said, I have to make it quick, you know, because maybe the second round is going to make me a knockout, make a knockout on me. So I had to do it very quickly, and I think he was right. He did it very quickly, and that's it.
Boxing is a bit like love. Fools rush in. You've got to pace yourself. This is the whole idea of World Championship boxing. You can't go in and knock everyone over. You just can't do it. It's not possible. No. But as for him he doesn't even belong in the same sentence as let alone the same ring as Alexander Usyk.
But the timing is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Boxing's about levels. And, you know, Moses Itauma, at the moment, he's domestic level. He's getting up there. But I think a good fight, not Usyk, no, because this is the thing where they rush these fighters, they fast track them into a world title fight. He fights Usyk, I'm pretty certain Usyk would stop him in about 4-7 rounds. And that'd be his career pretty much in tatters. And it's a long way after.
I agree, and the step after is very high, It's not the same thing than White,
Exactly. White was past his best anyway. But 3 years ago, 4 years ago, White was a live opponent. But now he's done very little in the last 3-4 years. I believe he was probably a bit rusty also going into that fight. He wasn't quite right, in the fight, mentally, physically. He's past his best now, White is. White was just in there on name alone. Yes, he proved one thing, as I said before, he's a world-class puncher at Itauma. But he's, as you said yourself, is levels below Usyk. And to put him in now with Usyk...
He has to make it step by step,
It would be suicidal career-wise. His career would be left in tatters, and then he'd be just another... we've had it before. We've had Audley Harrison, David Price, the Liverpool fighter, who was going to become the heir apparent to Vladimir Klitschko. The list goes on. And, Joe Joyce is another one. And now, Moses Itauma. They're going to win. Well, it don't happen like that. They don't. You've got to bring a fighter along gradually.
Yeah. But Michael, do you think Itauma is with Frank Warren? I think.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So Frank Warren is very experienced, he got a lot of experience, and I don't think he's gonna have a fight, with Usyk very soon. I think. Yeah.
He's a very astute manager, and I think that Itauma at the moment is being overhyped. He's, as I said before, he's got loads of questions, boxes still to tick. There's so many questions that remain open, like there is any prospect coming up. But I'd like to see him brought along gradually, go in against Derek Chisora will be a good fight. He'll give him rounds. He needs someone who can give him rounds. Let's see what he does, what his character's like when he's, into the later rounds,
I have a good question for you, Michael. I know you like Joe Joyce, okay? And what do you think a fight between Itauma and Joe Joyce?
Joyce is showing, he's really has faded badly, sadly, from the world scene. And the thing is, I'll say it again, as I said before, he was very badly managed. Getting back to Steel Stang, the Chinese guy, he got beaten in that first fight. And to put him straight in against the guy so soon after such a devastating loss against the same guy, it was just disgusting. It was terrible. And, he never had the necessary time to make those adjustments to go into that second fight.
I agree with that, yeah.
He got beat more comprehensively and much more quicker. These people in the game, the guys behind Joe Joyce, they're not boxing people. And it's the same with Daniel Dubois. But I'd like to say something. He's got rid of Don Charles now, which I think is a good thing. But the guy he's taken on, Tony Sims, he was a good ex-pro in his time. And he's a very, very good trainer. I believe he was with Carl Froch, Darren Barker, who was a world champion himself, the IBF middleweight champion. So his pedigree is very good, Tony Sims, and he will not take nonsense. He will sort of like knock Dubois into shape, and Dubois will listen to him.
Who is the coach for Itauma? Is it Ben Davison? I think yes.
I think so. Yes. He's another guy.
I like this coach. I think he's a very good coach, Ben.
Yeah, he is very good. But I feel that the passion is lacking there. Tony Sims has that bit of passion, from what I remember. He'll sort of like tear into a fighter. But Enzo Calzaghe and Jimmy Tibbs, they were popular old school. Swabs in the mouth, that kind of guy. Al Braverman was a classic, from the 70s, 80s. He was a guy who handled Mustafa Hamsho into he maneuvered him into 2 world title fights against Marvin Hagler. And, he was the kind of guy, he'd have swabs in his mouth, Hamsho would come back to the corner, get a wet soaking sponge and whack it into Hamsho's face to wake him up. And, Jose Ribalta, when he fought Mike Tyson in 1986, a couple of fights before Mike eventually won the world title against Trevor Berbick, his trainer was biting on Jose Ribalta's trainer. He was biting on Jose's ears, and that is to clear the fighter's head. It's an old Cuban trick. But these things have these kind of all sort of tips and what they do in the corner, that as it seems to have sort of like been lost in, in time. It's sort of like these are old things, and then it's not being moved onwards. It's not being taught to these new trainers, the new breed of trainers. But Tony Sims is a very good trainer. I've got a lot of faith in this guy, and I feel that, yeah, he may well maneuver, but the one thing that he can't teach, no fighter can teach a guy, and that's art. And the Bois, I hate to say it because he seems a nice guy, but he does seem
McCracken, he's still in the landscape? McCracken?
Oh, of course he is. He's young enough to come again. I mean, he's 28. Of course he can. I mean, once I believe Usyk's only going to have 2 more fights, possibly Parker, Fury, and that'll be it. And, I'd really like to see Usyk quit myself. How about you? What would you like to see next for Usyk? I'd like to see him retire.
It's very bizarre, but I see Usyk with, I have a blank, sorry. The Russian, the star in Russia, he fought with Usyk. He lost a fight with Usyk, The name is, I don't know. I'm going to tell you that after, okay? But I don't remember the name. But he was a very good fighter, Michael, in Russia. He was a champion, You know this name, you know this guy, but I have a blank now. So, but he was very good with Usyk. Usyk, I see Usyk right now, honestly, with nobody. With nobody. Why? Because I think maybe Fury, but I think you're not agree with that. But I think nobody can win against Usyk, I think, Michael, honestly.
I totally agree. I believe he might not be head and shoulders in the physicality of things because he's 6'3" compared to most of these behemoths in the heavyweight division. But skill-wise, he's head and shoulders above the lot of them. He is in front of the pack, so to speak. He's out there on his own, as far as I'm concerned. A fight with Fury, I think he's going to beat. I'm certain he'll beat Joe Parker. I really am. I know stars make fights, but Anthony Joshua and Parker fairly easily. And Joshua is nowhere at that level with that skill set like Usyk is. Usyk is. They should call him unique, not Usyk. He's so unique. He's out on his own. He is an all-time great. Cruiserweight, he's definitely in my top 3-4.
I agree.
I just get him in the top 20, but he's up there. He's in that top 20 with Ali, Joe Louis.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying he would have beaten them, but he's definitely in that top 20, definitely.
It would have been very interesting a fight with Muhammad Ali, prime for prime, but Usyk and Muhammad Ali, but I think right now Usyk, he's untouchable, he's unbeatable, and the next fight, even with Parker, I think it won't be a good fight for boxing fans, because we're searching a good fighter for this gentleman, but I see nobody, Michael. Honestly,
no.
Nobody.
I think that Parker will last the course. I think he'll go the course, but he'll be outboxed, comprehensively outpointed, and it'll just be a one-way fight. I believe. I mean, Parker will probably make it interesting at times, sure, but I just can't. And then onto a third fight with Fury. Again, it'd be the same result. I can't see Fury ever beating Usyk.
I'm not agreeing with that. I think if you can find one fighter who can beat, I think Usyk. I think it's Fury, but the last fight with Fury was too big. Missing a lot of cardio in this fight, not Usyk. Usyk, he's got, 36 years old, 37.
38.
At this time, he's got, I think, 37, but the cardio was perfect. This gentleman has a very good training. It's wonderful.
The thing with Usyk is they're all going, people now, because it's Facebook, it's the social media crew who get on there. They're saying he's getting on now. He's 38. Yes, Father Time is undefeated. You know, any boxer will tell you that.
Yeah.
Anybody. But the thing is, with Usyk, he hasn't had a lot of mileage, you know, so to speak, physically. He hasn't been in many, many hard fights. He's won pretty much everything, especially at heavyweight, comfortably for me. The Fury fight, the second one, yes, that to me was a lot closer, but it didn't put a lot of wear and tear on Usyk. Usyk is they'll say he's 38. He's a very relatively fresh 38-year-old. I would say if he wanted to continue, he's got another good 4 years left in him. Definitely. You know, there's no signs of showing of him slipping. You know, no sort of like, you know, he's not, you know, showing any slowing up. He's still a very, very fit man, and physically he's more like a 28-year-old than a 38-year-old.
He's fantastic, this guy, Michael. And I think the first fight with Fury, I think Fury was better than the second one, except the ninth round. The ninth round, you remember the ninth round? It was terrible for Fury. Yeah. But you know, the 1 round to the 8 and the 10 with the until the 12, he was very good, Fury. You know, he was a little bit, you know, he was in good shape, you know, in this fight, Fury, you know. In the second one, I'm not sure of that, honestly.
Well, he came in heavy in the second one, as you said, because I think he was looking for the KO, he was looking for the stoppage, and he never came. Yep. But the thing is, I saw it differently to yourself. I had the first fight a lot more clear cut for Usyk, but the second fight, it looked like Fury was just sort of catching up on Usyk a little bit, and I just had Usyk. I had Usyk winning it but just about. He had a lot of like what we call nip and tuck, you know, rounds. He was bagging the rounds, but only just. But he was doing enough, and that's just my opinion, you know.
I respect it.
Yeah. Likewise, as I do yours. But I had a lot closer second time round, and a third fight. Yes, it has a lot of intrigue, definitely. But those guys could fight probably 7 times, 10 times. It would always have that intrigue because of Fury's size and how Fury approaches the fight. But if he was to fight Usyk another time, a third fight, then he would have to come in a lot lighter and, you know, not be coming in too heavy. But for some reason, I just had it close to that second fight. I don't know why. It just looked a lot closer to me.
So, Michael, it's very interesting, you know, boxing today, but now we can't talk about the super middleweight, you know. We can't talk about Joe Calzaghe and Enzo. Yeah. Enzo was bigger, you know. When you listen, you know, he was a big man in the ring. And Enzo,
well, you know. He was a little man physically, but he was a bigger, larger-than-life character.
Yeah,
and he used to give his fans, his fighters, a lot of GBH of the ear rolls in that corner. When he wanted to lift this guy, it's not bullying. He's getting the best out of the guy. I believe Joe Calzaghe was 42-0, really, not 46-0. Enzo was 4-0, but he gave Joe the extra 4 to make 46-0. That's how I saw it, because there was times when Joe, he was like, it's like Angelo Dundee and Muhammad Ali. Way back in like 64 when he boxed Liston, Ali Clay, as it was known, he wanted to quit. He said, cut him off, I want to go on. Because his eyes were stinging, something that was on Liston's gloves that was rubbed into Clay's eyes, Muhammad Ali. And he said, cut, and it fell on deaf ears. He wasn't listening, Dundee. So Dundee won Clay. He got Clay through that, you know, that troublesome time. And Clay went out, his eyes cleared, he was boxing on instinct, and he won the title. Same thing with the Frazier fight, the third fight in Manila. He said to him, cut him, you know, cut the gloves, I'm finished. And Dundee didn't listen, and he was very lucky because Eddie Futch pulled out Joe Frazier, you know, and so again, Dundee got that victory.
At the 14 rounds.
This is the same thing with Enzo. They have this way of being able to pull guys through. And nobody knows Joe Calzaghe better than his own father. You know, he knows that what he has inside him, Joe has. More so Joe, because he's a fighter. Enzo was never a fighter. But he pulled him through. And he was not the same. He wasn't just like that with his own son. He was like that with his other world champions. Enzo McBurnelli, a cruiser, Gavin Rees at light welter. And he instilled that, you know, that passion and that little bit of anger, a lot of anger actually, a little bit of terror into his fighters, so that they would go out there and they would produce and get the victory. And the same thing can be said of Jimmy Tibbs, who's, I don't believe his son Mark, he's still training guys. But Jimmy Tibbs was another guy, and there was a boxer called Tommy Shields, who was a welterweight from Frank Warren back in 1986. And he told my mate, God rest him, Lenny Lee, who was an absolute legend. If you watch any Frank Warren shows from the 1980s, 80s or 90s, you'll see Lenny Lee's face in there. His real name was Lenny Ladame. And Lenny, he said to him, Tommy Shields said to Lenny, he said, I'm more scared of going out and fighting my opponent. He said, I'm more scared of him than I am my opponent. You know, because Jimmy used to tear into him.
I'm going to give you a name, okay? And you will tell me what do you think about it, okay?
Yeah.
Jeff Lacey.
Well, as you know yourself, Jeff Lacey was the 168-pound Mike Tyson. He was going to come over, destroy Joe.
I have my notes here. You know, you have no notes.
Absolutely, but Joe Calzaghe, I knew I'd never ever, gone against Calzaghe. I've always rooted for him. I've never thought they're going to lose this. The only time I thought that was after the 12th round against Hopkins. I thought they're going to give the decision to Hopkins because I thought it was a close fight.
So it was a very close fight with Hopkins, not the same thing with. Not the same thing with Jones. It was not Roy Jones. It's not. Yeah, maybe. And I think that it's the debut of the fight. Joe was on the floor. Did you remember that? This?
Yes, he was.
He was on the floor, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
After
I thought to myself, he's won this, but I think it's going to go the other way because he's in Hopkins' backyard. But I was pleasantly surprised, that he managed to get the win.
Yes.
But, Lacey was a guy who was knocking him all out, blah, blah, blah. And then along came Joe, and Joe just put on a master class. I mean, it's punch perfect. And he floored Lacey to, put that exclamation mark on the victory in the 12th and final round. And he was a winner. It was absolutely, he's one of the best boxing displays I've seen in a long, long time.
Joe was very quick. He was very quick,
yes.
A lot of blows, in the fight. Yeah. He was fantastic, this gentleman.
What's your favorite? What's your first time you ever saw Joe fight? Can you remember who it was against?
Oh, I think it was my father. My father said to me, Richard, go to see this gentleman. He's very good. He's a very good fighter. I said to my father, who is it? Joe Calzaghe. Go to see this gentleman. He's a very good fighter, but it's a long time ago. I don't remember, but after, I've seen Joe with, I think my best fight, it was with Chris Eubank, Chris Eubank Sr.
Oh, yes.
It was a very good fight, a hard fight for Joe, it was a very tight fight. And I know Chris said to Joe, I'm gonna join you, we're gonna be in not in heaven, but in evil time, it was very hard for Joe, this fight.
Yeah.
Chris was very good, he's a very good fighter, this guy. He fought with Nigel Benn also, 2 times, I think.
Yes. Yes.
He won those 2. Yeah,
he beat Ben. The second one, I thought Ben won, but it was a draw.
Okay.
But Eubank said to Calzaghe, I'm going to take you into the trenches. And Joe wasn't entirely, well, he knew what he sort of meant, but he had never really been in the trenches before, Joe Adam. And Joe came out of that fight, he was the winner, the world champion. But the thing is, with Calzaghe, he was meant to fight Steve
Running
Collins.
time, let's go. You can go,
okay.
You can still.
Yes, and Collins pulled out because he had an injury, and he vacated the title and then stepped Eubank. sort of like late notice, really. And Joe, he floored Eubanks twice and took the decision. But, a lot of people always say, he won't go far. And with his father, he needs to change his training. But why change a winning formula, when, you're beating everybody outside? The first time I saw Joe fight was in 1992 in the National Amateur semi-final.
Oh, yeah, wow.
ABA semi-final against Dean Francis Govestin. And then the first time I see him box as a professional was against, funnily enough, Chris Eubanks' cousin, Bobby Joe Edwards.
Oh, yeah.
And this was Eubanks' first cousin.
I didn't know that.
And he was a super middleweight Joe, as you know, but this guy was a cruiserweight. He was, so it was like a catch weight contest. He was giving away a chunk of weight, but Joe came out and beat him over 8 rounds, and he beat him fair and square. And Joe really was fast in that fight, too quick for Bobby Joe Edwards, and he won the fight easily. But then, from there on, I think it was 94, I think, when he boxed Edwards. I might be wrong. Yeah, 94. Then he got, 95 actually, when he boxed Edwards. Then later that year, he became British champion, and then from there on, he just sort of like basically, he went from one plateau to the next, world champion. He made, I believe, 20 defenses at super middle. He's an all-time great, without a shadow of a doubt. And
but in a professional fight, which fighter you preferred against Joe Calzaghe?
My favourite performance, Kessler, I believe. I was there.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I was there. But I'll just quickly tell you a funny story. I lost my voice for 2 days after that. I was running to the thing. Every time Joe opened up on him, I was running to my seat and all the way down to the thing. And a security guard said, "Hey, get back." And I said, "Hey," I come all the way from Colchester to watch this fight for 2 hours. But it was all cool. But the thing is, a little funny story. When I used to report, I used to write. I went to a show in York Hall in Bethnal Green in London, schedule of British boxing, and I was there, and it was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock when the show finished, and I wanted to get home that night because the following morning, 2 a.m. the next day, Sunday, 2 a.m. British time, Calzaghe was boxing Roy Jones. It was going to be 4 o'clock, but I wanted to get home. Though I was tired, I wanted to get home so I could watch live as it happened. Joe Calzaghe, at the time, my favourite British boxer at the time, but Carlo Colarusso, he's my favourite British fighter of all time.
Oh, yeah, you're sure? Wow.
Yeah. After Carlo retired, then
he's your friend, eh?
Joe.
He's your friend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Carlo, true professional, the epitome of a true professional, had nothing given to him. A lot of these fighters, they get padded records, they get nurtured along easily against easy opponents. Carlo had none of that. He was a guy who got to a national final, ABAs, robbed, I think, in the final, bad stoppage. It's on YouTube. And, he started getting put in against light heavyweights, and he's only a light middleweight. But the thing with Carlo is he's a very, very strong guy. Oh, yeah. He is so physically strong. And he is I love Joe Calzaghe, but Carlo Colarusso is my favourite British fighter of all time. So when I say Joe was my favourite, this was after Carl at the time. But looking on the, overtime, from back in time, obviously Carlo Colarusso is my favourite fighter over Joe Calzaghe. But the thing with Carlo was he came up the hard way and he kept going. His career is an inspiration of never give up. And that is what a fighter is all about. He embodies, Carlo Colarusso embodies that spirit, that very being of a fighter. He had nothing coming. Like Rocky Balboa, it's the same kind of thing. Art imitates life, vice versa. And Carlo would not give up. And eventually he got a shot at the Welsh title, and that's a big title. That's a coveted title in British boxing. And he won that, and it was only fitting that he should, because he is a championship caliber fighter, and he's now a champion when he won that. But then he came along and he took on the guy you brought on the post, Glenn Catley, who boxed your guy, Eric Lucas. Catley was a very strong guy himself. He came in against Carlo. Carlo stopped him.
Oh, yes.
Took his unbeaten record. Oh, yeah. So that goes to show the quality of Carlo Colarusso. If he'd been managed that little bit better, well, quite a lot better, actually, not a little bit, because he was badly managed, he would have, I really think he could have got all the way to the world title. Definitely,
Oh, wow.
physical strength, Richard, is something you don't see. It's like a force of nature.
Mm-hmm.
In all the fights I've seen, thousands and thousands over a period of 40 years, there are a handful of fighters I have seen with this immense physical strength. The white Muhammad Kawi, who we recently lost sadly.
Yeah.
Obviously Mike Tyson, obviously. Mustafa Handfeld, Vito Anspafanko, and Carlo Colarusso. Those guys, if I was going into a punch-up in the street, I want him on my side. But Carlo Colarusso is a guy who also not just beat Glenn Catley, he boxed two of Nigel Benn's sparring partners, Ray Webb and Tony Bellinor, who was a national champion himself as an amateur.
Okay.
And he stopped Bellinor. This guy is... but the thing is with Carlo, he's respected throughout the game. He's respected. A lot of guys feared him. They didn't want to fight him. Very, very strong guy. Very strong. Boxed Richie Woodall, who went on to win the world title. Boxed Lloyd Anigan. Bad stoppage. Another one. And he went on to fight for the most coveted title in boxing. Forget the WBC, WBA. The British title, the Lord Lonsdale Challenge belt, is the oldest in boxing. And it is the most coveted title. You can't dilute that title. The WBC, WBA, they've all had their titles diluted. They're instant, blah, blah, blah. But the British Lord Lonsdale belt is the most coveted, and the title that he won, the Welsh title, is coveted. There's been so many great Welsh fighters down the years prior to Carlo and since Carlo who have won that title. Calzaghe never boxed for it, he never, but as an amateur he did, but Carlo was an amateur, the Welsh champion also. But a great fighter, Carlo Colarusso, very strong,
so
for money fight.
We will do, a special salute, to Mr. Carlo Russo, your friend,
Colarusso, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. His career, I spoke to a guy once. He was very ignorant to it because they don't. 11 wins, 11 losses. Yes, but look at who he's fought, and that belies his ability as a fighter. He was a very awkward guy, but it's what worked for Carlo, but the strength on him, he used to win fights on strength alone. He used to drain the other guys down, he did that with Glenn Catley, but Catley, his people afterwards, not necessarily Glenn, but his people afterwards said, he was weight weakened. But it's funny that Catley in his comeback fight after losing to Carlo boxed Kirkland Lang. Now, I don't remember Kirkland Lang was a welterweight. He beat Roberto Duran, Kirkland Lang did.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember Kirkland Lang ever boxing as a middle. He boxes only as a welter light middle. So that fight, I'm certain, I need to check it out. I believe that was still at light middleweight. They were saying that he had weight issues and couldn't make light middle. No, I believe Glenn Catley, no disrespect to him, he's a great fighter himself, a world champion, WBC. I believe he was just beaten by the stronger and the better man, and that's how and I believe if I did a listing, I'm putting Carlo Colarusso above Glenn Catley. It's that simple, I'm putting Carlo Colarusso above quite a lot of these guys.
Okay.
And I really rate him highly, and we need another Carlo Colarusso to come along because he was such an exciting fighter.
So a salute for your friend Michael, and
our friend. Yes. He watches our page. Our friend Carlo Colarusso. Great guy.
Super, and about Joe Calzaghe, I have that, in my notes, he was, the personality of the year by BBC Sport, in 2007, eh? So, boxing fan, did you like this, podcast together, Michelangelo Serra and myself, Rick Amel, about the London Montreal boxing show, So, I hope you've enjoyed this show together. So, thank you. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. J'espère que vous avez aimé le show, le London Montreal Boxing Show avec Michelangelo Serra et moi-même, Rick Amel. Donc, la semaine prochaine, nous allons avoir Canelo Alvarez, Terence Crawford, et nous allons parler aussi de Carl Froch. Donc, et voilà, restez là. Soyez prêts pour la semaine prochaine. Donc, merci. Thank you for the next week. We're going to talk about Carl Froch a little bit. We're going to talk about Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. Take care of you, boxing fans. Bye-bye.